Welcome everyone to our our community, an antidote to crisis. My name is Bill Van Lopik. I'm the organizer with Esther, and this is our very first virtual webinar that we've had. And I just want to go over some quick things about what we do with a webinar. So we will have various panelists. You will be able to see them. But they won't be able to see you at all. So if you have any questions or comments, there's a little, at the bottom of your screen, there's a little chat box. And if you hit that chat box, you can put in comments. We only ask that when there's music playing, we're gonna run some lyrics in that chat box, that you don't put anything during that time, because that'll cancel out the lyrics. We have two songs that we have people performing. So those will be running in the chat box. So just hit that and you'll be able to see the chat box and the lyrics of the song. So I welcome you to this. And for our first speaker, I would like to welcome the president of Esther, Gary Crevier. And he will have a few words for us.
Good evening. And thanks to all of you for taking the time to join Esther through this new media venture. I am Gary Crevier, president of Esther, here in the Fox Valley. We are an affiliate of Wisdom, a member of the national organization Gamaliel. I begin this evening by asking all of us to pause for a few moments to bring our attention to the fact that all of us here in the Fox Valley, at least, are presently on the land of the Menominee Nation, the original residents of the Fox Valley. Thank you. At this moment in time, in the presence of the coronavirus, we are all faced with some form of isolation and realize that in a lot of ways, this abnormal lifestyle, if you will, just might have to become the norm, at least for a while. But what cannot become the norm is the stopping of Esther's justice work in the midst of this pandemic. We know that the most marginalized of our society are those who are suffering the most. And that is why we come to you this evening by way of this Zooming technology to reassure all of us of our continued work for justice, never losing hope, but rather depending on it, rather than falling into some form of self-pity. Now, the word Esther, as some of us know, stands for empowerment, solidarity, truth, hope, equity, and reform. We are a nonprofit interfaith organization made up of like-minded people from various faith traditions who, because of our deep faith in humanity, see our connection to all aspects of society, so much so that as long as the dignity of someone else is being threatened or trampled on, so is our dignity jeopardized. Because you see, in justice work, there is no such thing as the concept of the other. We are all one. And rather than being overwhelmed with all that needs to be done, Esther chooses to focus its attention in specific areas, such as our needed growth in racial equity awareness, prison and immigration reform, public transportation, mental health issues, and environmental justice. And we address these issues by first and foremost developing leaders from these different faith traditions and developing relationships with our community leaders and state legislators, advocating for needed changes at the local, state, and national levels. And keep in mind that we advocate for issues and concerns, not candidates or parties. And so tonight, some of our community spiritual leaders and musicians will be sharing with us their words of inspiration and music of hope. May we be energized in our ongoing work for justice during these difficult times. Someone experiencing oppression once said that hope is not the same as optimism. It's not the conviction that something will turn out well, but rather the certainty that what we do does make sense, regardless of how it turns out in the immediate future. And that is our justice work. Let us begin this evening then by listening to some music shared with us by Noah Harmon.
Hello, my name is Noah Harmon, and I am going to perform Masane's Meditation.
Good evening. I'm Jerry Mansholt, a bishop in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, and my privilege to serve here in East Central Wisconsin, living here in Appleton. I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak to you this evening and to invite your support for the life-giving work of Esther here in the Fox Valley area. A little over a month ago, I received a note from a friend of mine in South Africa. He also is a bishop in the Lutheran Church in South Africa, serves in the Western Diocese and lives in the city of Rustenburg. COVID-19 has hit South Africa hard and impacted the lives of many South Africans in their churches and communities. Bishop Ubani expressed his gratitude to me for reaching out to him with my own words of encouragement and compassion and care. And then he quoted to me an African proverb. He said in this proverb, "If you want to reach your destination quickly, walk alone. But if you want to travel far, walk in accompaniment." That is, walk with others, travel together. Well, it seems to me that if we want to travel far as we deal with COVID-19 and arrive eventually at a much better place on the other side of this coronavirus, we would all do well if we paused for a moment and reflected upon just what is happening in our lives, and even ask what it is that we are experiencing, and if perhaps God might even be speaking to us through these events. Perhaps we need to learn something about our lives, about our systems, our structures, our values, and our priorities. I know these are days that are very disorienting and they seem so bizarre at times. But I think if we can pause and to reflect, and we can maybe see things that to this point we had not really seen before, and we might learn things about our lives and our life together. And we can do this with hope. I think of the words that Paul wrote in that letter to the Romans in the Christian scriptures, where Paul speaks about suffering, suffering that produces endurance, endurance that produces character, and character then that produces hope. And he says it's a hope that does not disappoint us. For Christians who have recently celebrated the resurrection of Jesus, our hope is ultimately grounded in God, who gives us this promise of life and mercy for us and for all of creation. Well, that kind of hope in the midst of COVID-19, maybe we're able to see things that perhaps we had never really quite seen before. Things like inequities in our healthcare system, or deep divides between people rich and people who live in poverty. Divides between those of us who are privileged and are able to shelter in our homes and those who have to risk so much, whether it be in the healthcare systems or serving in the front lines in grocery stores or in other walks of life. These are also days when we see all kinds of signs of hope and life, of energy and creativity and ingenuity among us and around us. I think of people who have been forced to adapt to some new realities in their homes or in their work, in their communities. I think of how imaginations have been stirred to think new thoughts and consider possibilities never before considered. Think of the many artists and musicians, business leaders, pastors of congregations, parents and teachers, people of so many walks of life who've been finding ways to adapt, to extend care and compassion, to reach out with support and encouragement as they strive to give hope and support and encouragement to family members, to neighbors, to people all around them in our communities. There's a prayer in many of our liturgies and our prayer books that speaks of our being called to ventures of which we cannot see the ending, by paths as yet untrodden, through perils unknown. And then the prayer goes on to say, God, give us faith to go out with good courage, not knowing where we go, but only that your hand is leading us and your love supporting us. I know that we're living through some difficult days. That's certainly true. And I know there are people who are experiencing no small amount of trial and suffering in their lives. These are also days when we can grow together as community. By traveling together, as my African friend and colleague wrote, by listening deeply to the pains of people, listening to the stories of those around us, and trusting that our lives are in the hand of the one who is leading us, whose love is supporting us. I thank you for being a part of this Zoom conference this evening. Thank you for listening, and I thank you for your support of Esther.
You can go ahead, Terry.
Okay. My screen was still saying Jerry Mansell. So,
No.
good evening. My name is Terry Dawson. I'm a member of the Fox Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, and I'm involved with the Esther Environmental Justice Task Force. I'd like to sing a song tonight by Sally Rogers. She's a pretty well-known folk singer. She's been active for about 40 years, and her hymns appear in the Unitarian Universalist hymnal as well as Quaker songbooks. And this is called Love Will Guide Us. I think it speaks about some things that we all need in these times, love and peace and hope. And if we can share those together. The lyrics, I understand, are in the chat. If you'd like to sing along on the chorus, that comes along about 3 times. I'm actually doing more verses than are in the Unitarian Universalist hymnal. So feel free to sing on the chorus. And if you don't want to sing, I hope that you'll feel the lyrics and the song of peace in your heart. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us. Peace has tried us. Hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the dark night. You are like no other being. What you can give, no other can give to the future of our precious children, to the future of the world where we live. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the dark night. Hear the song of peace within you. Heed the song of peace in your heart. Spring's new beginning will lead to the harvest. Love will guide us on our way. Love will guide us. Peace has tried us. Hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the dark night.
Thank you, Terry. In addition to being the co-chair of Esther's Environmental Task Force, I'm grateful that I get to know Terry as a member of the congregation that I serve as the senior minister of the Fox Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Appleton. That song is one of my favorites from our hymnal. It reminds me of my Universalist ancestors who called on God's love in hard and trying times. They relied on that all-encompassing love, and they did their best to live their own lives in response to that love, loving other people and this world the best that they were able. The theme of this evening's event is Our Community, an Antidote to Crisis. There's no doubt that this pandemic is a crisis. It's a crisis of worldwide epic proportions. And in the midst of this, many of the world's religions celebrate their holiest times of the year. People of the Jewish faith celebrated Pesach without being able to gather in person for Seder meals. Christians celebrated Easter at home alone. And Muslims are now in the midst of Ramadan, fasting and praying without the benefit of a larger community with which to break their fast. But despite the incredible anxiety, fear, grief, and disorientation in our lives right now, miraculously, each of us and each of our communities are finding our way forward using our respective faiths as our guide. As a Unitarian Universalist, I turn to our 7 principles. These are the foundation of my faith, and they give me hope. The 7th of our principles states that we affirm and promote the interdependent web of existence of which we are a part. My Unitarian Universalist faith recognizes and affirms that we are interdependent with all of existence, that we are not separate, we're not apart, and we're entirely dependent on all that is. Nothing in my lifetime, or probably any of our lifetimes, has quite so clearly demonstrated our interdependence the way this pandemic has. The shadow side of interconnection is that we're connected. If I go out and touch something, even if I don't feel sick, it could potentially make someone else feel very sick hours later. The economic ramifications of this crisis are far-reaching, devastating, and continue to ripple out as closures, job losses, reduced incomes continue to impact more and more people in our communities. But the benefit is exactly the same. The beautiful part is we are connected. Our connections are real and true, even if we can't see them. Even if we can't touch each other, we are all still in this together. We're worshiping together on Zoom or YouTube. We're providing pastoral care to each other over the phone. We're writing to our legislators to demand greater justice by email or text message. We're using sidewalk chalk or construction paper in our windows to share messages of love with passersby. Events like this one help us to remember that connection across our community, across faith communities, as we build community, share hope, and work for justice. We might not be able to sing like angels, I know I can't, or speak before thousands, but we can each do whatever it is that we can do, and it will ripple out beyond ourselves into our communities, providing support and care as we share resources and build community as an antidote to crisis.
Can everybody see me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. My name is Jo Phillip, and I am the current vice president of Esther, and I am a member of Fox Valley Islamic Society. So I am one of those Muslims in the middle of the fast right now, and we are feeling that distance from one another. Normally, we would be getting together and breaking our fast together as often as possible in community, and we don't get to do that this year. But it is really touching to be able to reach out and be together with people who value us and who share values with us for events like this with Esther. The main reason that I find myself really glad to be a part of Esther is because of my ability to do more in service of social justice as a member than I would be able to do if I were by myself. Because when we put all of our efforts together as a community, we become really a stronger voice to speak truth to power. And that's really what I see in the heart of every member of Esther whom I've been really lucky to meet. So those phone calls, those letters, those emails, the signatures, you're showing up at city council meetings. When we're doing these things in groups, we are getting so much more done. And that extra boost of power is exactly what is needed. It is exactly what is needed to help our fellow human beings to live the dignified, safe, healthy, strong lives that we are lucky enough to live. And so for that reason, I support Esther. And I would like to ask everybody who is gathered this evening for this Zoom meeting to consider going to the website, Esther Fox Valley, And donating. It's very easy to donate, and you can donate as little or as much as you like. It's easy to do online if that's your preference. And for me, again, it gives me a little bit of a feeling of being a big part of something. Even if I can't show up for all the meetings, I can put something behind it, show up to the ones that I can do. If I can't make every phone call, if I can't send every text, I can at least help support this group that does so much for so many. So again, thank you for attending. Thank you for giving your attention to Esther this evening, and I hope you will consider donating. Thanks.
Okay, you're good, Mamadou.
Okay. Bismillah. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent and merciful, the giver of health, strength, wealth, the one who sees us as we are tested by this hardship. Good evening. I am Mamadou Koulibaly, president of the Fox Valley Islamic Society. And in the recent past, I've been in the leadership of Esther. And I thank Esther for this opportunity. And I found it a very good community activity. We are thankful to Allah for giving humans the ingenuity to develop tools for us to connect, to work while in physical isolation. We are thankful for our good health and the means to participate in a forum like this one from our homes, for the time to relax together with family, neighbors, and friends. And we pray for our good health and the ability to continue to safely shelter at home for ourselves and also for other community members. We pray for the strength and the health of the most vulnerable in our communities, and that everyone convening this evening will keep the needs of those most vulnerable in mind and contribute whatever we can to support them, not only through this pandemic, but through what comes after. Be faithful in the love for one another and in the having mercy for one another and in the kindness towards one another are like one body. When a member of it fails, all of the parts of the body call one another to share the pain through sleeplessness and fever. This is by Muslim. So many of you know that we Muslims are at this time observing Ramadan, a month of fasting. Normally, it is not only a time for fasting, prayer, and reflection, but also a time of intense sharing, connection to the needy, and celebration of the community. In the normal Ramadan, we would be meeting at one another's home, breakfast, and pray together. We would be hosting generous potluck called iftar, gathering at the mosque. And we'll be meeting nightly to pray our evening vigils known as Taraweeh. But our mosques are closed and we are praying at home, some alone, others with close family members. And I presume that is the same scenario for members of other faith communities, Christian and Jews, Sikh, here and across the nation. In fact, the pandemic has given us ample opportunity to prepare for the month of Ramadan. The internal personal practice of Ramadan, the prayers and fasting, the reflection and charitable giving are not only compatible with the demand of sheltering in place, but they enable us to derive deeper meaning for it. So time at home is not time lost when a significant part of it is spent in remembering and worshiping God, obeying his command, and doing good deeds. We could see sheltering in place and Ramadan coinciding and take it as a test from God, take it as an opportunity, welcome introspection and self-examination, take extra steps to ensure our neighbors, especially the elderly, disabled, and vulnerable, have the necessary foods and medication. We could pick up the groceries when we buy our own. We can also request proper action from our elected representative and do it by mail or call, by phone call. So a lot can be done even while sheltered at home. Finally, I would like all of us here to consider setting aside some extra time during our sheltering at home and to reflect deeply on the gift of our Creator and the gift that provided us with. Let us realize the amount of our great blessing, and not only in food and shelter and clothing, not only in income to care for our needs, but also to the love and the compassion we share with others. This is why we are all together here now. To close, I wish to remember in prayer those who suffer alone in isolation, in intensive care units in hospitals, in quarantine at home and in nursing homes, those who are in greater risk in prison and jails, and those who have no home at which they might find shelter. Let's remember those who risk their own health and life to serve in healthcare setting, as well as in grocery stores, gas stations, post offices, and other public places. Let's remember those farmers who grow and raise food, who have lost their income due to the supply chain failure. Let's remember those undocumented people who do thankless work all over the country, upon who we all rely, and yet do not have access to healthcare or unemployment protection. May Allah, may God protect all of us, and may He raise our compassion towards those who most need us. May Allah accept our prayers, bless us with good health, and guide our leaders to take us out of the pandemic. Amen.
I can see myself,
Yep.
and I see the lyrics on there. I think it's my turn.
Yep, you're on.
Thank you very much, Bill. Good to be with you this evening. My name is Ben Morris, pastor of Emmanuel United Methodist Church in Appleton, and it's a pleasure to be with you all tonight. These past few weeks preaching, I feel like a similar message God has put on my heart is during this challenging time, how do we as people continue to offer extravagant grace to each other and peace to each other, and be community to each other. A message we've heard already tonight from our community. And Esther is an important way that we continue to do that, friends. I'll stop talking now. They called me to sing. So I'm going to try to do that and share a song that's in one of our hymnal resources at the United Methodist Church, but it is has roots from our friends in the Catholic tradition in the prayer of St. Francis. Make me a channel of your peace. Please join as we sing together. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring your love. Where there is injury, your pardon, Lord. And where there's doubt, true faith in you. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there's despair in life, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, only light. And where there's sadness, ever joy. Oh, Master, grant that I may never seek so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there's despair in life, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, only light. And where there's sadness, ever joy.
Okay, you're good.
Okay, I didn't see the screen announcing me, sorry. I am Rebecca Henry, and I am the pastor at First United Methodist Church here in Neenah, Menasha, and I appreciate the opportunity to join with all of you and to have this time of reflecting on hope in the midst of this time that we are living in. I have a number of sayings that I surround myself with in my office, and one that I have on a magnet I thought was of value for us at this time. It's from Vivian Green, who said, "Life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning how to dance in the rain." In my experience with storms, you don't always know when they are going to start. You don't know how intense the storm might be or what conditions things will be like at the end of the storm. And that is certainly true for us now as we find ourselves in the midst of this pandemic storm. We don't know how long it will last. We don't yet know all the implications that this pandemic will have on individuals and on our communities. And we certainly don't know what things will be like when we begin to reemerge, except to say that things will not be the same. It will be a new reality for us. And so as a community, there is an invitation for us now to learn how to dance in the rain. Undeniably, it's not always fun. There are some moments of joy and opportunity to smile and laugh in these times, but it is also hard. It feels messy and it feels chaotic a lot of the time. And yet I still find that there is reason to hope. My faith and the Christian scriptures that I read are a source of hope for me. And as has already been lifted up, I find some strength and reassurance in the words of Paul in his letter to the Romans in chapter 8. The Spirit makes us sure about what we will be in the future. But now we groan silently, maybe not so silently sometimes, while we wait for God to show that we are his children. And this hope is what saves us. But if we already have what we hope for, There is no need to keep on hoping. However, we hope for something we have not yet seen, and we patiently wait for it. But I also find hope not only in the scriptures and the words that I read there, but in remembering the history of these words. In particular, I find myself thinking a lot about that time in history when the Israelites were taken into captivity in Babylon. They were isolated from loved ones who were left back at home. They were in a foreign land, and it was a very painful time. But it was during that time of deep soul searching and reclaiming that they found themselves in, as they reclaimed who they were as God's people and what it was that they truly valued. And out of that time, we have these wonderful treasures that came, like the creation stories that remind us that God creates good out of chaos. And indeed, there was this deep spiritual life that came out of that, and a deepening of community that emerged from that long and painful moment. And so I find myself hoping that that will be true for us as well in these days. And I see signs of that hope being realized as I listen to stories and as I see how people are responding, whether it is the hearts in the windows that unify us, whether it's hearing how individuals who don't need a stimulus check are giving it away to assist undocumented immigrants, for example, or who are offering it to food pantries who have seen their need rise so significantly. About services like meals continuing to be served to those who depend on them, or the meals through the school systems. People are making masks not just for their families, but are asking in the community at large who needs a mask, or sending them elsewhere where they are needed. And yes, even some of the commercials that are encouraging us to come together. These are the stories that bring hope and that we are called to lift up as community members, both to celebrate, but also to continue to inspire us to go and do likewise. And I think as leaders, we're called to create and encourage community in new ways. And that has largely been the focus for us up to now. For us at First United Methodist Church, that's included creating community through Facebook, not just with our worship opportunities, but with daily postings that encourage people to check in with one another, to encourage a sense of gratitude and to look for those places of blessing, offering activities to do, and so forth. And I find hope in the fact that in this last week, I've begun to notice a shift happening. It's no longer just our staff who are responding to the various comments that are being made. Rather, members of the community are starting to engage one another and experience what this form of community has to offer. We create and we model how to live in community in these new times. And now that there's more of a sense of rhythm in this new normal, a new sense of community being established, as leaders, our focus can turn even more so to those who are hurting. In our times of prayer, we lift up various communities that are affected by this pandemic that often go unnoticed, such as immigrants, whether it's because they are detained or unemployed, those who are incarcerated, those who are disabled and unable to retain the help of caretakers, those who are working and are arguing and pleading for just wages and benefits now that they are finally being seen and recognized as essential. And we begin to ask, how do we respond? How do we broaden our community, our sense of community? We become the eyes who see people often forgotten and invite the community to see and respond as well. And I think that's where we find ourselves now, asking those questions, trying to understand what does it mean to work for justice in this time and to see how it unfolds. As Paul said, hope is what saves us, not in what already is, but what is yet to be. And so I keep looking for those signs of what is yet to be. knowing that it is in the waiting and in the chaos that God is doing something. And I know that what God does is good. And so those signs of hope not only sustain me, but they inspire me to become a co-creator with God.
They interviewed her from her car as she leaned out the window. She was in one of the dozens of cars lining the state capitol building in Lansing, Michigan, honking their horns in protest and demanding an end to the stay-at-home orders issued to protect the citizenry. As she leaned out her car window, she displayed her emerging gray roots to the interviewer and asked plaintively, "How long do I have to put up with this?" It reminded me of one comedian's observation that in the next month or so, 80% of all blondes will disappear from the face of the earth. How long, O Lord? How long? It's a much asked and essential question of faith, though I believe the psalmist directed it towards more serious matters than beauty care. I don't mean to be too harsh with that woman and her gray roots. I say that as someone who is acquainted with the problem of gray roots from time to time. I'm all for liberating Michigan and Minnesota and our own state of Wisconsin and all of us in the world who have been living through these challenging days. But in tossing about liberation language, let's remember what freedom is really for. As Moses stood before the Hebrews, clutching the 10 commandments in his arms, he put freedom in the largest context and the sharpest contrast possible. I have set before you this day life and death, blessings and curses. Choose life so that you and your descendants might live. Across many faith traditions, we understand that real freedom is not about choosing your preferred brand of toothpaste or even your preferred worship style. Freedom is not best expressed in matters of personal preference or convenience. Real freedom is about us having the ability to choose life. In the book of Acts, the fledgling Christian community was barely standing on its own newfound and very shaky legs. They were ready to collapse, save for two things: the strengthening grace of God's Holy Spirit, and secondly, the determination of the community to share all things in common to safeguard the health of all. Now the whole group of those who believed were of one heart and soul, and no one claimed private ownership of any possessions, but everything they owned was held in common. That's how Luke put it in the 4th chapter of Acts. Among those coming forward to share their wealth were Ananias and Sapphira, who had recently sold a piece of property, but they had cleverly concealed part of those proceeds and held it back from the offering for themselves. Their selfishness discovered, Ananias, followed swiftly by Sapphira, dropped dead at the apostles' feet. That's how Luke tells the story. Now, I don't doubt, but there was some exaggeration in Luke's telling, that the real facts were probably far less dramatic. Ananias maybe died of a long illness, and Sapphira perhaps years later. The story was probably dressed up a bit in the community, in the Christian community's memory, for dramatic and I believe for comic effect. But the message was clear. The power of God's Spirit is the power of life. And those who do not choose the Spirit are dead already. Dead in their souls, dead in their hearts, dead in their selves, if not yet in their bodies. Like I said, it's a not very subtle message, but it makes its point. Freedom is a matter of life and death, and the choice you make between the two is the harvest you will reap. We are living in a time when we are clearly being challenged to choose life. Did you see the sign proudly displayed last week by a Tennessean protester? Sacrifice the weak, reopen Tennessee. Sacrifice the weak, reopen Tennessee. That sign wasn't about freedom. It wasn't about choice. It was about bondage. Bondage to convenience, slavery to self-interest, slavery to fear and death. We are being offered the challenge of real freedom in these difficult days. We are being offered the choice of life. We can choose life by seeking the whole community's health, not the safety, comfort, and convenience of the privileged few. We can choose life by choosing selflessness, understanding that real personal sacrifice is required for us to serve the common good. We can choose life by boldly finding hope for a changed tomorrow, because we have endured the struggles and learned the lessons of a difficult today. Together, let us choose life so that we and our community and all of our descendants together might live. Thank you, and God bless you.
You're on.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Steve Herbie. I'm a member of the Esther Board, and I want to thank you for being part of this virtual gathering tonight. About 125 people registered to view the program, and we've been seeing participant counts in the vicinity of 75, which is very heartening to us. And that we have such an amazing turnout this evening is, I believe, an expression at least of your desire to draw together with like-minded people in a circumstance that forces us to stay separated. As an Esther board member, I'm grateful for the trust that you are placing in Esther by being here this evening. I hope that your sense of community is being strengthened, that your perspective on crisis is shifting as a result of the words and music that you have heard during our time together. All of us associated with Esther and all of us participating this evening are grateful to our speakers and musicians for being willing to share their thoughts and longings, their time and talents with us in this way. I hope you feel as I do that they have been a great inspiration. As an Esther board member, I'm expected to be a steward of Esther's mission, to always be asking, what are the things that we are called to do and be as an organization? And how effectively are we responding to that call? With that in mind, I'd like to note the two lines that appear at the bottom of this evening's slides. The first one reads, building community, sharing hope, standing for justice since 2004. These three activities, building community, sharing hope, standing for justice, are the touchstones of Esther's work. We return to them constantly, asking ourselves what form they should take now. Especially in this pandemonium, we are asking ourselves what it means to build and be community in the Fox Valley today. We are looking for sources of hope in our present situation. And we dare to proclaim with the children in Hans Christian Andersen's story, the bare naked injustice of empire. We are standing for justice. Through the Wisdom Network, of which we are a part, and in collaboration with faith communities and nonprofits in the Fox Valley and elsewhere, we are standing for justice by amplifying the truth that we are, in an important sense, not in this together, because the impact of COVID-19 falls most heavily and disproportionately on the impoverished, the marginalized, those living in the shadows, including incarcerated people and undocumented people, but also those subsisting on an income that is inadequate and undependable, those without health care at a time when health care is so obviously a human right, those for whom having an even inadequate income requires that they be exposed to coronavirus daily. And we are challenging the idea of a post-pandemic return to normal because what we have gotten used to as normal too often does not provide what people need to thrive and flourish. We want a new normal where the old injustices fall away and equity becomes the norm. Equally, today we are building community despite the separation that is required of us. Part of this is purely mechanical, abandoning face-to-face meetings and other gatherings and using online technology and social media, such as this evening, to bring people together to find common purpose in shared experiences. All 6 of Esther's issued task forces, along with its board and committees, continue their work virtually, sometimes surprising ourselves to discover how the new online format improves on the old ways. Stay tuned as our task forces plan future events like this one. And what then of sharing hope, the third leg of the Esther stool? Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, formerly chief rabbi of the United Kingdom, shared these words recently in a TED conversation. I have to make a distinction between optimism and hope, he said. Optimism is the belief that things will get better. Things will get better. Hope is the belief that if we work hard enough together, we can make things better. For Esther, the hope we have to share is the conviction that working together, we can bring about a community founded in generosity and hospitality, where ethnic, cultural, and personal differences are prized and honored, where each person's intrinsic worth is affirmed and supported, where everyone has what is needed to flourish, where the freedom of each individual is held in creative tension with what is good for the wider community. Here's the thing. We covet your participation in Esther. We hope for your engagement in our task forces, your attendance at our events, your willingness to advocate with community and political leaders, but also with friends and family for policy, legislation, and personal choices that lead toward this vision, what Martin Luther King famously called the beloved community. And we also covet your financial support. We believe that over the past 15 years, we have shown what a staff of 2 or 3, surrounded by a volunteer force of hundreds, can accomplish with a quite modest budget, especially when viewed in the light of our mission and goals and ambitions. We invite you to think of yourself as a supporting member of Esther, whether in the form of a one-time gift or as a monthly sustainer. We hope you will make note of the links that will shortly appear on your screen and that you will visit one of them soon to show your support.
Okay, Father Joe.
Hello, greetings everyone. My name is Joe Matern. They call me Father Joe. I'm at our studio here, music studio in Casa Esther in Amro. Thanks to all those who came before with their powerful messages, eloquent messages of hope. Along with President Gary Crevier and Bishop Mansholt, we highlighted that virtue of hope. Dorothy, played by Judy Garland, as she made her way along a yellow brick road with her friends, also had that hope and that dream of something that was better to come. We of Esther join with Dorothy and we sing her song as we hope for a better place to come.
So thank you for attending tonight's memorable expression of hope and encouragement. Steve has posted on the chat room some of the organizations that are doing great things also in the Fox Valley that are assisting with different programs of people who are the most vulnerable and marginalized. So you can look at those on the chat. So thank you for attending, and we look forward to seeing you again at another Esther event. Please, you're encouraged to come to our task force meetings. Since they're virtual now, it's easy to plug in. Just let us know. And we hope you have a good night, and thank you for attending. Be safe, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.